This is amazing, and it could have ruined everything. Recently I've been thinking a lot about the climax of Pokémon Emerald, and I realized that this was almost the point of no return. To look at another medium, superhero movies as of late really haven't been capturing audiences the same way they used to. Obviously this is due to a variety of reasons, but one pretty general complaint is that the stakes haven't felt all that interesting or compelling. Almost every story results in the characters trying to stop a world-ending threat. And that in and of itself isn't technically bad, but it usually derails a lot of the groundwork that's being laid throughout the movie. So going back to Pokemon, the clash between Groudon and Kyogre was truly the first time we had seen this type of conflict in a Pokemon game. The Terra Team Rocket in both generations 1 and 2 was pretty personal, as I've covered before. They weren't trying to take over the world or even really the region with a grand spectacular event. They basically already controlled everything, and their occupation of Silph was their grandstand to further establish dominance. And even in Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, when you're only dealing with one of the legendary Pokemon, it isn't really the end of the world, it's just that you need to restore balance. The kaiju battle between the two of them in Emerald version is a way of escalating the situation a bit more. But even still, Archie and Maxie weren't actively trying to bring about destruction. They were simply trying to bend nature to their will and were horrified when they discovered that this would cause a lot more damage than they intended. So there is still the threat of the world as we know it ending, but there's no clear human motivation behind it. This is presented as a result of not respecting the natural order and the legends passed down throughout history. And so moving on to Generation 4, the only way that you could taunt the end of the world is the destruction of a universe. I still do enjoy the story of Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, but clearly we ended up peaking in terms of potential damage that we need to stop. After Emerald version set a new standard for the climax of a Pokemon game as a player needing to save the world, Pandora's box was open and there was no way to put things back. This could have easily devolved into a formulaic villain who wants to use the power of a legendary Pokemon to destroy the world, and now we need to stop them. On the surface, to onlookers, it may appear to be that way, but scaling things back in Pokemon Black and White, with Ghetsis wanting to only control the Unova region specifically, really worked out. And there's also the fact that he doesn't want destruction or rebirth like Cyrus did, but instead wants to control everything that's already there, making him different enough. And on top of that, there are relationships with other characters that make everything much more dramatic. And I think that's why in the next generation with Pokemon X and Y, Lysander hasn't been one of the most beloved villains. Sure, he wants to reset the world because he seeks out true beauty, a little different than Cyrus wanting to create a perfect place without negative emotions, but there's still something to be said about the fact that the most memorable part of these games is the story of AZ that unfolds over the course of it. So ultimately, it still had something to set it apart. And of course in Pokemon Sun and Moon, Lusamine simply wants to meet the Ultra Beasts and live with them as a way of forming a new life after she loses control of everything else. So moving on to Chairman Rose, a lot of what plays out with him in the Darkest Day feels a little too much like what happened in Pokemon Emerald with Maxie and Archie. I know I'm basically spark-noting all the Pokemon villains and the climaxes that they bring about, but hopefully the point comes across that following up the stakes of saving the world could hypothetically have been a disaster for Pokemon, bringing us boring repetitive story upon boring repetitive story. Because when things are repeated and not exactly done better than their predecessors, you don't get as invested. I think it's a major reason that generally the perception of Pokemon stories in games are often so low and a lot of character and plot points get misinterpreted due to waning interest after experiencing a few less compelling things. I swear these stories and characters are either fine or really good. Dude, I've even defended Chairman Rose. But of course the big successes come most from when the scale is effectively centered around a smaller setting or goal, because then the games can be filled with character relations and development that really drive the story. So in the end, I think Pokemon was actually able to very effectively navigate a world beyond the turning point of Pokemon Emerald. We could also attribute this to the story team just getting better and more comfortable as time went on, which is most likely, but I still appreciate how after ramping things up to a universal scale, that is when we later got climaxes centered around Ghetsis, Lusamine, and Professor Sada Arturo, who are all parents with a child that we end up becoming good friends with, and maybe that was the key all along. I guess it just goes to show that Pokemon is really most effectively when the story gets very personal. You can still have end of the world type of stakes, but the core of what really makes everything work is just good characters. Well, that was just a quick look at things after these little thoughts have been rattling around in my brain ever since I finished Pokemon Emerald recently. There's just a part of me that realizes there could have been a reality where every single Pokemon villain wants to end or rule the world with the help of a legendary Pokemon and doesn't have any really meaningful character connections, but really that only happens a few times. And you know, at least there isn't a giant hand somewhere in the middle of the ocean that no one talks about. That would be worst case scenario. This obviously wasn't a deep dive into Pokemon villains because I've already made a few dedicated videos on some of them, so I would like to discuss the others when I get a chance to replay some of the games that they appear in, but I will actually start compiling those old videos into a playlist so that we can fill out as time goes on. So let me know what you think about all the times that we as the protagonist had to save the day and which was your favorite. Also let me know which I should get around to talking about in the comments below. Anyway, I should get going because those two big idiots are fighting again. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, including the Great Gators, Errors Away, ELR27, DeAndre, Zanito, Jamarcus Nixon, Frix, Boss Dragon, Justin Dowes, Ben's Quizm, Mazhar Siddiqui, Cemetery Hill, Pastel Blood, Cosmo Zero, Mr. Saturn, Rainfrux, Cheez-It62, Alex Switch, Shiny Hunter, Michael Snyder, Lockadox, GatorKid509, TF, Mathiclong947, Taijirai, Justin R, Phantom, and Quago. If you would like to support, see your name here, get access to emotes for comments, live streams, and sometimes early videos, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well for more memes. Anyway, this is GatorX, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all later.
Two powerful teams, only one will rule the planet. Introducing 95 new cards with Pokemon e-trading card game EX Team Magma versus Team Aqua. Whose side are you on? Let the battle begin.
Booster pack sold separately.